I'm going to pull you guys off and put you right back on. Hey guys, how you doing? Martin Lopez from the Curiosity Theory. Got another show tonight called The Power of Forgiveness. And I'll kind of read you what I wrote, and then I'll introduce a couple of my friends here. Let me add this banner because it actually says what we're talking about. So what I wrote was, our life's journey is full of experience and lessons. So, you know, every day in life, we have experiences, we have lessons, we have things we're working through, right? And when we start off as children, like, life is full of possibilities and dreams. Like a little kid, oh my God, I can make this happen. You see a fire truck, you want to be a fireman. You see a police, you want to see, you want to be a policeman. You see an astronaut, you want to go to, you want to be an actress. All these different things that happen, right? Completely full of possibilities and dreams. And as we get older, happens, right? And I didn't write the word, but happens, right? And our dreams get crushed and reborn again. So we get our dreams crushed, but then we get reborn again because we say, you know what? I'm going to do it this way. I'm going to do it that way. In the Curiosity Theory, we call that the winning formula. So we find ways to work through our dreams, even though we get our butts kicked. Problem is that when we get our butts kicked, we don't have a system of forgiveness, a way to work through the pains and the scars and all those things. Today, we're going to work through that. We're going to talk deeply about that. And then some of the lessons serve us. Some of the things we learn serve us. And while others keep us stuck in the past, right? So today I have the pleasure of hanging out with three amazing souls. Two of them are going to show up right now, and hopefully my other buddy shows up. So first off, I'm going to introduce you to my buddy Dylan. Dylan, how you doing? Dylan Stewart. He's
I'm
called
awesome, Martin.
Cool. Dylan's called the Mac Whisperer, but in addition to that, he holds a men's group, and I have gone to Dylan for counsel. I have gone to Dylan for for advice. Not really advice, I would say kind of more counsel. Wouldn't you say, Dylan?
Yeah, and it's deep. It's like a friendship level of counsel. It's not like you're professional, you're going to your therapist. It's like, let's come eye to eye and let's find a way that we can work through what you're struggling with together, rather than somebody telling you what to do, somebody working through it with you.
Yeah. And the other person I'm going to bring on is a really good friend of mine who, right? Had one of the most profound insights that I've ever had in my life. We were actually in a program together, University of Santa Monica. We were studying spiritual psychology together in my second year. And she got up and did this share. And I literally use that share in so many different conversations. When I coach people, when I'm working on forgiveness, when people are working through things like that. So I want to introduce you to Benda Edelman. Brenda, how you doing, honey?
I am doing wonderfully well, considering the state of the world. Thank you.
That's great. That's great. So Brenda, tell us a little bit about yourself.
All right. Well, there's quite a few things about myself. I like to start funny because the story is not funny. So I'm just going to do this in 1 minute. So I grew up in Brooklyn with a Jewish wannabe Italian father who taught me how to drive a Cadillac at 6 and how to shoot a gun at 10. A bohemian artist mom who took me traveling with her all over the world and read Shakespeare to me from the time I was 3 years old as a bedtime story. Big characters, big love, big laughs. And then, and this is true as it all is, in 1995, my father, who I adored, shot and killed my mother, and then within a month moved in with my aunt, my mother's sister, before marrying her. So that set me on the path of what should I do now that my whole world has collapsed? I no longer have my family, and it took me many years, but when I found a way to forgive my father, which I learned the tools in that master's program we went to.
I'm going to hold you off right there. That is it. I'm going to let people just sit and just like have to listen to that. That is the share, but it wasn't like this. It was a deeper share and more cut. But I literally was privileged to watch Brenda work through the story she was talking right now. It was crazy. Yep. So also in my first year of USM, I made friends. Like, you show up with somebody, you see somebody, and you're like kindred spirits. Like, you fall in love with the person the second you meet them. Jami Lula, our third guest, is the one that I feel that way. I'll talk for a minute, Jami. So you got to hold. So I
100.
met Jami the first weekend of USM, the University of Santa Monica, in a spiritual psychology class. He allowed Yvette and I we stayed almost the whole time in Jami's house, and Jami literally left his house and went with his now wife Susie and kind of just gave us his house. He didn't even know us.
Wow.
But in addition to that, it's the way Jami is. It's the way he gives his heart, and like giving your heart is one thing. Giving a heart and being generous is one thing, but being a true, I don't know. I'm going to figure out a way to explain who you are, and I think people will have it come out. But Jami is an absolute genius, and what he says, what he sings about, and how he sings, how he performs. I still remember the songs he sang, all the songs he sang. I still remember those, and he's the kind of guy that he's the kind of singer or artist, songwriter that you take his lyrics and they actually become part of how you live your life. You know, I have so much more to be grateful than to be sorry for. Spirit is in the house. Those are kinds of those are not only songs and lyrics, but they're affirmations. And so without further ado, Jami, how you doing, brother?
I'm great. I'm sorry I'm a couple minutes late here. I was making a vegan dessert for my wife. I'm like hazelnut, all kinds of stuff, but like hazelnut and chocolate. And I'm like, I got to get this done. I want my wife to have some.
That's awesome. How's Susie doing?
So she's doing well. She's doing really well. Doing a lot of she just got done with her online class called Luminous, for women by women. She does it with Shafali Sabari and another woman, Greta, who I don't know her last name, but they're just doing fabulous work. We did a meditation together. I did music and she led a meditation this morning. We're doing it Monday, Wednesday, Friday on Facebook Live. And so it's cool to work together. We have a really good time. And man, the consciousness that's going on that is available right now is beautiful and fascinating. And it's like, okay, it's like, I think there's going to be a few more people that are turned on to it and turning to that. It's cool.
That's
awesome. I want to say one thing that Jami probably doesn't know.
This is not my conversation. This is our conversation. So
I heard you sing back at Agape when I was first getting into New Thought Ancient Wisdom back in like 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And you always stayed with me. Your work was so beautiful and just deep in my soul. So when I found out we were doing this together with Martine, I was like, how cool that all of this, all of us come together.
Thank you. Thank you, Brenda. I appreciate it.
Very, very cool.
Yeah. I was just thinking about it because it's been 26 years that I've been at Agape now. And that was like, getting sober was the first thing, but then that got me to Agape and the awakening. I grew up Catholic. Any other Catholics in here?
Yeah, I call myself a recovering Catholic.
I call myself a recovering Catholic.
I think you told me that.
Yeah.
Catholic. I like it.
Yeah. But it's fascinating because I think as a young man, I was an altar boy as a kid for 3-4 years. And I wanted to know God. I wanted to be a priest.
Wow.
And then I found girls and, it was just like, it was gone. It's like, I can't do what? Nah.
Been there, done that one.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's cool. So today we're going to talk about forgiveness, the power of forgiveness. And my experience of forgiveness through you guys is how you guys work with people, how Dylan works with men, how Brenda has done her own inner work and how that's like all over the world. And Jami, how I really don't know you as a guy that's all about forgiveness, but I know that your body of work, I'm sure, speaks to that. So what I'd like to do is have Brenda tell her story again and then kind of go through it. And then talk about let us hear how she went through forgiveness. And then if we can add to that and just kind of vibe on that, that would be really cool. Okay. So guys, sit back.
Awesome.
I'm going to put Brenda on the screen and let her tell her story. And then we'll be back. It'll probably take about 5 minutes for her story. Take it away, Brenda.
Okay. So I won't repeat what I said before, but what I was saying is that basically my family was just so filled with love. I mean, there was a lot of unconscious things going on too, but I really loved my father and my mother deeply. And in 1995, my father shot and killed my mother and then married her sister, my aunt. I was an actress at the time, and my mother had read Shakespeare to me from the time I was a little girl. I studied Shakespeare in London and New York, and I actually found solace in the character of Hamlet, knowing that someone in the world, even if it was in literature, lived through something like I did, because that feeling of being alone with our suffering and pain and feeling like we're the only ones was what made me so lonely and kept me in despair for so long. And so the way I dealt with my my pain, in addition to breaking up with my fiance, because I really didn't feel lovable at all, was that when I started acting again, there was a storytelling exercise, and I put my story up on stage instead of hiding in shame. And instead of getting judgment, I had 100 people in class giving me a standing ovation, people sharing with me their secrets and how they'd been ashamed. And that gave me the motivation to turn my story into a one-person show. First time I put it up, it was very healing, jumping into the characters and stuff, jumping into my father's character and like seeing him as a full person versus just what he did. But I really didn't have the tools to heal. So I would go on stage, people would laugh, people would cry, and I would just, go home and really want to kill myself. Really, it's in the show. But I went back and got a master's degree in spiritual psychology, where I met Martine. I learned about forgiveness, but the missing piece was I had to learn about setting healthy boundaries and even what a boundary was. So I used those tools to first I thought I had to make peace with my dad. I was in on again, off again relationship with him while he was in prison. He only went to prison for 2.5 years on a plea bargain. And that I would hate him. I would love him. I would try to go to I better forgive him because that's what most people say, but I didn't know how to do it. And then when I learned what a healthy boundary was, I took him to court for wrongful death, but from a place of loving myself versus punishing him. I did a lot of inner child work. I took him to court. My brother and I won a $2 million judgment. He skipped town with my aunt, who was his wife then. And I really dove into, how am I going to feel better? How can I find joy again? How can I love myself to make self-honoring choices? And so for me, I started doing my one-woman show. I rewrote the show with the ending of taking my dad to court. The first ending of the show was, will I ever love and trust again? And I felt like I actually wrote that into existence. And then I was doing the show, and a minister in Unity Church in Sedona knew me, and he said, why don't you teach your class on, because you know how to do it? And I was like, okay. So I looked back and I looked back and I thought, why did I lose so many years? Because there were like 6 years to deep, deep, dark depression. And I realized for me that I hadn't really touched into my anger. Like, I hated him. I loved him. I was living in the past. But I kept stuffing my anger. And a lot of people don't know how to really deal with their anger in a healthy way. So I really, in my 3-step process of forgiveness, in the first step, which is moving out of denial and into acceptance of what is. So for me, it was realizing my father actually did this, not being in delusion or wishful thinking, which a lot of people are like that, even in like relationships where someone's cheating. Like, this applies to many different areas and situations. And in that first step is really getting your anger out in a healthy way, really being righteous, really being like, this mother effer, I hate him. How could he have done this to me? So that it doesn't live with you. It doesn't create disease. It doesn't create unwellness. It doesn't create addictions. And then the second part is moving into letting go of your need to be right. And that's where all the forgiveness comes in, and all the self-forgiveness and forgiveness of others. And then the third stage, which is not everybody gets, and I've been coaching since 2005, but is you actually know you've forgiven when you've gotten the lesson, and that person doesn't have any effect on you. And it's beyond, like, it's actually wishing them well, the person that hurt you. And I have worked with so many people who have gone through so many things, and I'm not asking anyone to do this. Nobody has to do what I do, but I've worked with a lot of clients over the year. I've worked with women prisoners, youth at risk. And it's my aunt. The reason I say this is because with my father, I was so dedicated to feeling better, and I loved him so much that I forgave him, even though I didn't see him again. With my aunt who married him, it was like, whatever, she's not a part of my life. And I teach this and I still compartmentalize. And I had a huge, profound healing about 3 years ago, right before she died, that I realized I'd been still hanging on to my righteous anger. That was actually probably maybe my mother's from years, if my mother was alive. But I had a profound experience of my mother visiting me from the other side. And when her sister died, just loving her, bringing her into the other side. And I was like, and I've been holding on to this righteousness. So that's my process in 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Amazing.
I don't like
25
small
years
talk.
in 5 minutes.
I don't like small talk, guys. I like, if we're going to talk, let's talk about something worth talking about.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
That's right.
I love that that process, Brenda, the steps that you've gone through, and what a, you know, tragic story to have to go through, but to come on the other side where you recognize. I really loved the comment about setting the boundaries and setting healthy boundaries, which is a big part of what I've been teaching for years, is that if you don't know your own boundaries, your own limits, your own, what I call your self-evident truths, you can't stop the people from coming into where you are, where you need to do the healing. And, you know, I had my daughter's mother committed suicide when my daughter was about 6 months old, and I was 20. And so I had that same kind of situation of, I held myself to blame as much as it was sad that she had taken her life. It was my fault. I had done something wrong. And I spent 20 years holding that against myself and damaging the relationship between my daughter and I, because I had been a horrible person in my mind. And so that same forgiveness and boundary setting that you went through is something I had to push through to let myself free and to let go of myself, which resulted in me coming out on the other side as this person that it doesn't matter. Whatever those emotions are, I'll feel them, I'll process them, I'll move through them, but I don't hold that kind of resentment and anger and guilt and shame towards myself or anybody else, because it just doesn't benefit any of us. And I really heard that in your story. So thank you so much for that process and what you've been through.
Yeah, thank you. I was going to say, even though my father shot my mother, I felt guilty too. I felt like I was so mad at myself for ever trusting my father. Like, how could I ever trust? And so I had to learn to like really forgive myself. And also the thing is, you know, when we are hating on ourselves, we're pushing people who love us away, like you were just saying with your daughter. So it's really not, it's like learning the lesson, whatever lesson there is, and loving yourself. Yeah, that was beautiful. I'm so sorry.
I think there's this big piece about loving yourself, which is no one else can ever love you any more than you love yourself. So if you've got this jar in your body that's your love jar, and it's that full or it's that small and it's all the way filled up, nobody can pour love into you. So you are the only one who can make the jar bigger. You're the only one who can properly fill it up yourself. And then once you have a big jar, then everybody else's love can come into you and yours can continue to grow. And all of a sudden you stop bouncing back compliments. That's the sign when somebody says, you're an amazing person, Brenda. And the old me would have been like, oh, no, I'm not. You know, that's, people say to me, you've brought so much light into my life, Dylan. My response is, thank you. You brought it into me. I can own it. I can take that forward. It's not this, there's no room for that. I have to bounce it out.
Cool. What do you think, Jamie?
Man, there's just so much, you know, I'm speaking with a couple other, what I perceive to be as therapists, counselors, coaches. For me, it's been a very interesting journey. Just before I got to USM, to University of Santa Monica, is when Susan and I first got together. And we were prayer partners. And one morning we had been praying together, and I think in the apartment on Moore Park that you stayed at, Martine, you and your wife. We had just got done praying, and I laid my head in my wife's lap. She was just my girlfriend at that point. We had just started dating, and I just lost it and started sobbing uncontrollably, saying, I'm not bad, I'm not dirty, I'm not bad, I'm not dirty, and just kind of went through this thing. And it was the second time that it happened, because it's like I just sobbed uncontrollably, like for no apparent reason. And it's when I got in contact. I was 38 years old, and I got in contact with the fact that I'd been molested over a number of years. I mean, the long story short was, I realized that my uncle had been molesting me from the time I was about 4 till I was 6. And then there were some other inappropriate behaviors later on in my life, which definitely affected not my sexuality, whether I was gay or straight or anything like that, but just my ability to be with a single partner and stuff.
Sure.
Well, I finally confronted my uncle at a family reunion about 13 years ago. And I had been talking to my AA sponsor and his wife, who was a black belt Al-Anon, about this, because I was terrified, because I dreamed for years of going and bashing this motherfucker's head in, excuse my language,
Sure.
with a baseball bat. I was angry. So I watched him over the weekend of this family reunion, and he'd been sneaking around with that purple Crown Royal bag, and he wasn't supposed to be drinking because everybody knew he was an alcoholic, but he was sneaking around like he was hiding it. And I felt, when I went and confronted him, I didn't feel anger. I felt compassion. I felt such a profound sense of compassion, because I'd been sober for a number of years at that point. That was 2007. So I was 14 years sober at that point. And I felt compassion because I knew that if I was still drinking, I could be him. There was potential that I could have, because I lose all filters, and I could potentially have done the same kind of things that he did.
Yeah.
And as it turned out, my sister told, I'm sorry, this is a long story, but
No, it's great. Please.
my sister told his youngest daughter that I had confronted him. I mean, it became this big, huge thing. She talked to her sister. They talked to their 2 half sisters. They'd all been molested by him.
Oh.
And it went all the way down to his granddaughter,
Wow.
who ended up filing suit. And he ended up serving 3 years in Jackson State Penitentiary for molesting his granddaughter. And I mean, there's countless other stories of people that had been perpetrated by him. And I say this because, I was fine. My mother turned 90 last March 17th, and I went back to Detroit. I spoke on the day of her birthday, and we went out to dinner, but then all her sisters and brothers had a birthday party, and it's her brother had a birthday party at my Aunt Peggy and Uncle Larry's house, and he was there. And I was praying. I was doing spiritual mind treatment all the way there. It's like, God, just allow me to be, and not, because it brought up so much. And I went and I actually hugged him.
Oh, wow.
Nice.
I didn't spend time with him in deep conversation because, like Dylan said, there's certain boundaries, but I was there to honor my mother. I hugged him when I left, and I didn't feel the energy that I had felt for years. And as we're taught at USM, it's like, I don't have anybody else to forgive except myself for the judgment that I'm holding about whatever situation happened. And
Let's talk about that. Talk about that.
Profound.
Yeah.
That is such a profound thing. It's like, I don't need to forgive him. I need to forgive myself for all the judgment. I forgive myself for judging myself or judging someone else as. And
Right.
that is the process that, I sometimes do walks where I've got to do forgiveness walks. I forgive myself for judging my wife for or my son or whoever I'm in contact with. It's such, no one else needs forgiving but me and my thoughts about what happened in the situation.
Yeah.
It really brings up something that for me is right on this point. This is the difference between guilt and shame. How guilt and shame can play with us in such a challenging way. Mm-hmm. And for example, I always use the concept of guilt is something that we did wrong, and shame is we are wrong.
Yeah.
It in a different way. I'm a little choppy here. I'm gonna.
You're
see if
great.
I
You're
can get
great.
us-
You're
All right.
very clearly.
Good. So, it's that difference between the guilt and shame, which is what you take in and what you are projecting outwards. And the idea being, I am a mess is shame, and I messed up is guilt. Guilt you've got to own, and shame you've got to let go of. You've got to pass through that where you're not holding it. And that's what you're talking about with the relationship with your uncle, is that shame that you internally feel versus the guilt. There is a guilt factor in it, but it wasn't your guilt, your shame about how you showed up in that, or Brenda about how you showed up with your father. That's the part we're working on, that you push through and you go, okay, I'm not messed up. The situation was messed up, and I can forgive myself and move forward.
I want to share something really quick, Dylan, and I don't want to invalidate what you just said. I want to bring it at the level of the curiosity theory. And so what you're saying is really profound, and it may not live that way for Brenda or for Jami. Like
True.
when we say to somebody like, yours is this. And what I try to teach in the curiosity theory is that's really it's really profound what we say to people. However, it may not be the person's truth. That thing that you're saying is yours is this. I'm really interested in, if you don't mind, Dylan, is how does that land for you, and like how does that resonate for you in here?
Right. That comes down to that I statement rather than, placing it on somebody else's. That's been my experience, is that through my life, I have to look at shame and guilt in separate ways and own them differently. So you're right.
I want to.
Can I share one thing?
Yeah, absolutely.
What came forward for me when Jami was talking too is that, for me, here's something practical that happened for me that changed everything for me. It was years and years of a journey of forgiveness, and layers where I thought I forgave, but I didn't really. And I was actually at Agape doing foundations back when Michael actually taught that. Yeah. And there was like a final project, and this poem came through where I recognized that my father and I were one, and that if I hated him, I was hating a part of myself. And that I didn't want to hate myself anymore. It was so profound, that awareness. I have it in my show. And I went to the top of a mountain in LA with my ex-partner and to witness. I seriously felt like there were angels by my side. I went with a fedora hat of my father's, and I went to the top of the mountain. I recited this poem. I threw his hat over the mountainside. Ceremony really helped me. And I let it go. And it was like all this energy, I let it go. And that was so important for me to recognize that if I hated a part of my father, I hated a part of myself. And it literally just, that part left then. Not that there weren't more things. There were more things. So that's why when anyone's like, I got it, I'm like, look, I've been doing this for 20 years and I still continue to have healing because I'm open. I'm open to it. Yeah.
Yeah. The ever-ending onion, right? The ever-ending peeling onion that peels. So, we've been on for about 30 minutes now, and I'd like to see, because we have great stories and stuff, and I'm really interested in like how you guys deal with things, like how you deal with, and there was a couple kind of key topics that we said, a couple key things that you said. One of the things was boundaries, and then one was loving myself versus punishing, like loving versus punishing the person. And I have something to share about those two. And then the I think Jami said like wishing well, like you wish well, like how do you, like you maybe confront somebody, or you're with somebody that has done something, and you've done so much work, you've done so much forgiveness that you can wish them well. So I'd like to kind of use the time we have here, the next half hour that we have here, to kind of talk about those three things. And if there's anything that pops up for you. So I'm going to ask boundaries. Dylan said something. Brenda said something. I don't think, Jami, you said anything about that. So I'm going to actually ask you to start with that. Is that cool?
Sure.
Okay, cool.
Well, boundaries for me in regard to certainly my uncle, who's like the big, I've asked my mother, when I talked to her, I said, I've told her, I said, I can forgive him, but she thinks that forgiveness means that I got to love him and hang out with him like he's my uncle. Like, you know, and it's like, it's not true. It's like, I don't need, and I went to her party and I was able to greet him because of the prayer work that I had done and all the work that I had done over the years, the inner work that I had done. But the boundaries is just saying, you know, it's like realizing those people that have been in our lives that we've considered friends, and then we realize, yeah, maybe not so much. And it's like I want to release them with love. You know, I've had some friends that were toxic in my life, and that is setting a boundary and just saying, I might not even, and that might be a part that I need to take greater ownership of, because there have been some relationships that I've just kind of walked away from. You know, not women. I mean, like men who like were like friends, and then it was just a toxic, didn't feel good, I didn't feel like I was being honored. So I stopped reaching out, and they kind of slowly went away.
Sure.
It's really being able to identify who I'm going to allow into my life. I'm sober for almost 27 years. I'm in another 12-step program that is a direct result, I think, of, you know, having been molested. You know, some of my friends who are not sober and they throw out these texts with, you know, suggestive photos and I said, y'all, you can't include me in these.
Yeah.
It doesn't, you got to realize this is a battle for me on a daily basis. And it basically comes from my sexual recovery. And it's like, you can't send this. You can't send this to me. I said, it hurts me to the core, and it's a fight on a daily basis to avoid this. It's like, if I'm going to be in this, I ask that you honor those, you know? So, I mean, being able to speak up for myself, and it's taken a lot of years, because I would just kind of go, yeah. But inside I'm very uncomfortable.
That's
So
cool.
it's just taken a while to find voice, to give voice to people that mean something to me and I want in my life, and letting them know. And then there's other people that I let go. I allow nature to just take its course and for them to go away. And if they come back and talk to me about it, it's like I might talk to them about it. But for the most part, they've just kind of faded away, you know, and I surround myself with loving. You know, but I don't surround myself with just yes people, because I've got people that are willing to come up to me and say, hey, you know, to tell me truth when I am unable to hear it. And
what I love about what you said, Jamie, is that it wasn't as though your path was over, your journey was over.
right.
One of the things you said, and I don't know exactly the words you said, but the way I heard it was that there's, you know, you got work to do. Like I got work to do. It's like, I'm not done. Yeah, maybe I have this really great idea for how I'm going to deal with my boundaries.
Yeah.
It's just an idea, and it maybe, but it also opens up other problems maybe, or other challenges, because, okay, well, there's this friend of mine that I don't really hang out with, but you know, and it just leaves openings, and I hear no judgment. That's what's beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
There's this really valuable thing that you're talking about, Jamie, that I think we have to kind of put an underline, which is that boundaries aren't about other people. It's about you.
Right.
It's about like you have to hold your own boundaries. You have to say, that's not okay. It's not about those people are bad because they're sending suggestive text. It's like, listen, this is a line that I'm drawing. This is something that matters to me, and I'm willing to say, you can't cross that line.
Yeah.
That's what boundary setting's about. It's about owning your territory and saying, I'm willing to defend this space here, and it's not okay.
And the beauty of that is my friend, because I talked directly to him, he honored it. And he said, wow, I'm really sorry. And it's like, those are the people that I know I want in my life. It's not the guys that's like, oh, you big pussy. It's like, get over yourself kind of, you know, that kind of guy, machismo kind of stuff.
Yeah.
It's like, he was like, wow, I understand and I honor you. And it's like, thank you so much. I appreciate that. Those are the people I want in my life. They can honor the boundaries that I set.
I
and love you for them.
Yes.
I definitely, I would say, lost a lot of people. I don't even think that's it. I think it's a vibration thing. When my mother died and I was really severely feeling like a victim, and a lot of people would like jump on the bandwagon with that. It's okay to be like that for a little bit, but if you stay there, you're going to attract, I certainly attracted people at that same level. And as I started to grow and I started to do my inner work and really focus on my spirituality, those people just left. But that said, I set very clear boundaries with people. And that's what I work with my clients on. It's like if you go home for the holidays and you have that brother that's like cursing or talking about politics or whatever, you have to say, you know what? This doesn't work for me, and I'm going to leave if you don't. There's so much codependence and stuff. Everything I teach is what I've lived through and done wrong, or something.
Right.
But my learning right now is that even though I teach it, is still, if someone goes up, for the most part, my inner circle, we're all on we're on this spiritual path. We're taking responsibility and stuff like that. But sometimes there's someone in my life who is not like that. And if I feel like my boundaries are being, affected, I will be that hard boundary first. And I definitely say there's a distinction between that hard boundary of cutting someone out of my life and actually moving into the place of, well, I'm not going to talk to them, but it's not going to be that from that energy of that's it. Right. But I'm learning to, even now with people close to me, realizing that to be like softer in a way. Like if I need space because I need to work or I want to do what I want to do, not what they want to do, how can I be like, I hear you. I hear that that's what you want, but I really need to do this, instead of like, sometimes I feel like I have to justify what I'm doing with my life, because I live in the world with everybody else, but I'm getting better because I want to be more loving. Like that's always my thing. I think with all the inner work probably that all of us have done is I can see quicker and quicker where I'm not in alignment, and it hurts. It's like I feel the contraction, and then I'm like, okay, how can I take responsibility, say I'm sorry when I am sorry, and pivot so that I can get back into loving more quickly each time.
I love that. How I looked at for myself, what you're saying, Brenda, is that it's the ability to be able to see what's happening here,
witness,
and then become aware of it, and then start to notice where it's happening, and then apply that to your beliefs, apply that to your values, apply it to your virtues, what's important to you.
Yeah.
And so let me share with you kind of the way I've been looking at boundaries is that boundaries are something for us. Like a boundary is something for me to understand, like, where I draw the line, where I, where that wall is that I would cross, or where I go into the next place, and not to project them on other people, like as though another person should live with the same values that I have, or the same, what I mean, the same boundaries, and I find that like a lot of people, I have found that and something comes up in the curiosity theories, people start talking about that. And what we notice is that people are projecting their boundaries on somebody as if it's another person's responsibility to do that boundary because it's a boundary you have. That's not necessarily the truth. I can take on a boundary because somebody says, hey, this is where my boundary is.
Can you give an example?
What's that?
Can you give an example if it's not too personal?
Yeah. Let me think of one. So let's say, wow.
Because I know the idea of like we always want our significant other to think like we do, and that doesn't happen often.
Yeah.
But is it like
okay, I'll give you one. So what one of the things that I found in my life and just my relationship with Yvette, I'd say more so than anything, is that it seemed to me like when she would say something like she wants something, and it was something that I didn't agree with, I wouldn't agree with it. I wouldn't even acknowledge it, like as any truth. Because how it lived for me is that I felt if I acknowledged what she said, I was in agreement with what she said. And it took my own self-esteem, my own ability to have value in myself to be able to acknowledge what she said and then be able to keep it separate from what's there for me.
I love that. See, that's practical for me. Then I'm like, okay, I get it.
Yeah. You guys I got Jami and Dylan nodding as though, can you guys add to that or?
Yeah, well, I think that's really such a perfect way to put it. One of the things that we've talked about in the men's circle is that men don't always get along. We've all got different opinions. We've all got different ways of working with each other. And when we're in a men's circle, we're a team together. So you have to have these spaces where it's like, this is how I operate, and this is my truth, and this is what's important to me. And the other person has to acknowledge, I hear that that's what's important to you. Now, this is what's important to me. How do we find the line between the two of us so that we can work together? And it's a really challenging thing, because sometimes you have to bend your boundary just a little bit so that somebody else's boundary and yours can create a path. And how do you do that without breaking your boundary? Where you're just like, I'm okay to be a friend with someone who does drink alcohol, even though I don't drink alcohol, and hang out with him as long as he doesn't bring the alcohol in the house with him. That's where I'll say the line, and he'll say, well, I'm going to still drink when I'm home, but when I come to your place, I'll respect your rules. Okay, we found a lane.
Yeah.
We can both win here. And that's the challenge, because otherwise all of these boundaries cross with each other, and you can't have a relationship. You can't have a friendship. You certainly can't have a team, because we're all different and we all have different things that matter and that are important. You can't just be so rigid that nobody else can work with you.
Yeah, where's the safety? Go ahead.
It's very strange right now that I'm even having a challenge with this, with social distancing, being that this is how it is. Some people feel like, you shouldn't have to do the social distancing. People in my world, some people are feeling like extreme the other way. It's really interesting. And so it really talks to what you're saying. It's like, listen to each other and then see how can you make it work where you're really respecting each other and you're not so hard line on this is how it should be. It's really like everything's magnified right now.
I mean, what if we as a country could find that lane where both the right side and the blue side could find a path where we can agree and talk? We've just lost all middle ground, and it's because everybody's so hard and rigid on their opinions that you can't even acknowledge or potentially see the other person's point.
Yeah.
And then we lose. We all lose.
There's another example right there, Brenda. Yeah, there's that thing. There's a really good example where how does this party even acknowledge the other thing? Because in somewhere I think that we have it hardwired is in the acknowledgement is agreement.
Yeah.
It's
which
like,
it isn't.
And in my marriage, that's how I did it. Like, I'm acknowledging you that's the way for you. So somehow I'm agreeing with you. And that was really difficult for me. It was really, really tough.
And that's just like, because we don't talk about that, and the ego comes in and has to be right. Because I think a lot of us, I'll speak for myself, because I had so much, I've had, and I do have righteousness about so many things. And I teach, don't be righteous, because I need to keep learning it. But I feel like, for me, at least, growing up in the household I did, and yes, the story of what happened with my parents is extreme later on, but I've heard so many stories of what people go through. So, when you grow up in a household where things are crazy, for me, that righteousness of I know what's right and I know what's wrong was a survival mechanism within the craziness. It's just that then I, brought it into my adult life where I didn't need that. So, we hold on to how we're right as if it's some kind of trophy instead of, whoa, just move that energy and be in the loving, and have a space for all of it,
That's
Goes
great.
to that AA saying, it's like, do you want to be right or do you want to be happy?
Yeah.
And
Sometimes I want both.
yeah. Both. The example for me and the blessing that I've had in my life, because I've sung in spiritual communities all over the world, and I've prayed with so many people of so many different faiths. And the common theme that I perceive throughout the prayers is, may our crops grow, and may our families live in peace and in health. That's the consistent theme from Buddhists to Muslims to Christians to Baha'i to it's a real interesting thing, because it comes up in the context of of a lot of Christians of we're right, our God, we've got the corner on the market, our God is the infinite God kind of thing. And it's like, like Beckwith said one time, it's like, God's infinite. You can't put God in a box, so it's that discussion between the red and the blue. And, it's like my God's, thing is bigger than your God's thing, thing. It's like, we can't compare. It's like, cause we're all talking about the same thing. It's about how we can be in touch with that inner infinite source that's within each one of us and have a relationship with whatever that is, however we pray, whatever dogma or faith or whatnot that we choose, and then do it in a way that helps us live our best life and suspend judgment of the way that anybody else expresses themselves and celebrates life.
I love that. I love that. Yesterday, I was going to do a Facebook Live, and the idea was, how can we as human beings, being whatever religion, whatever faith, whatever idea that we have, be it anything, or even being atheist, like, how can we look at somebody and just really love the fact that they have something that they believe in, I take my book out and I take the Bible out and I go, whatever, John 3:16, and whether I agree with it or not, I can just why not look and go, wow, that's really beautiful. Like that you got something you're committed to, or somebody that's a Buddhist or somebody that's Hindu or something that they just have, that they have something that they believe in that speaks to their heart. And that's the direction they're going. And how can we all just get behind it? Not to agree with that as our path, or because we agree that that's great for you, and even saying that's great for you is kind of passive aggressive and condescending.
Well, it's one step further though. I actually believe if you really don't believe in separation, us being mad at them, if we actually realize that they're a reflection of us, outer worlds being a reflection of our inner reality, then it's like, why am I being so hateful toward that person? Because you're actually being so at the other level. I was doing some Ho'oponopono work today about that in my 30-day forgiveness training. And I was doing it and I was like, yeah. So it's even taking my personal experience with my forgiveness around my father, knowing there was no separation, and saying, well, I'm not separate from the red or the blue state. I'm not separate from that person. But it's not like it's easy, because
it's not easy.
But I don't agree with what they're doing. And, the big question that, I've always had is, I believe in God. I believe there's something good, and still having the questions of, and why is there sex trafficking? And why is there molestation? And then knowing I can't ask that question, or, I can ask it, but the answer is not necessarily going to make me satisfied,
It's not going to put it together. Yeah. It might not put it together. Yeah.
There's this concept, this belief that because the other person believes something different from you, that you're right and they're wrong. When in reality, you could both be wrong, or you could both be right. And in the end, it really doesn't matter. Two people can have opposite opinions and both be wrong, or both be right. And it doesn't affect your ability to hold who you are and how you are for yourself. And what's funny is, in the period of separation, of this social separation that we're in, I've never felt more connected. I've never felt more one. I've never felt like I have the same experience as everybody else, even though I have a completely different experience, because with that separation that we're having right now, we can look at ourselves in a different way and suddenly go, oh, we're all simultaneously feeling alone. Therefore, none of us are alone. Well, that's interesting.
That's awesome. That's beautiful. That's cool. There's a, I think what Jamie was saying, I wanted to kind of add something to that, is there was a song when the truth, there's certain truth that we all want. What is it? Crops. We want crops to grow. We want our family.
Yeah, we want our crops to grow and our family to live in health and peace.
And a song by Sting, Russians, he sang a song called Russians, and the lyrics say, believe me when I say to you, I hope the Russians love their children too. Yeah. And those lyrics bring me so much peace, because when everybody's worried about North Korea, or worried about Chinese and all this stuff, I think about that song, and I believe in my heart that they love their children. They're not interested in having their families destroyed and wiped off this earth. And I just think that's a really profound lyric. And I find a lot of comfort, and I live with that lyric. Let's move on to the next thing. And so it's 7:50. Can I get you guys to stay for another 15, 20 minutes after 8:50? Is that okay? Or do you guys got to go?
I'm a little tight on time at 8 o'clock.
Okay.
I got a kid I got to go get food for.
Okay. So if you got to go, then no problem. Let's just talk about this one last part. Loving myself versus punishing. So I'm gonna give you kind of a story. Where that's helped me, Brenda, in my life is raising children, is how to discipline or how to communicate with a child in a way that kind of a boundary, almost like these are the rules we're gonna do, and what I'm doing, you're on restriction, or I might take something from you. It's not as a punishment, and I think it has a lot to do with how I'm approaching it. Like, am I approaching it as a punishment? I'm going to tell you a story. I've never told this story in public. My son Jordan, he was about 10 years old, and he got in trouble. He did something, and I took him home because he was in trouble. And on the way home, I was telling him how he's going to be in trouble when we get home. We get home, I start to spank him. And in a moment, I saw that I was actually being relieved of whatever anxiety I had about that in the punishment.
Wow.
I sat back and I started to cry, and I just grabbed him, and I could just think about it. I just held him, and I'm so sorry. And I just noticed that what I was doing is I was relieving myself. It had nothing to do with him. Had everything to do with me and the way that I felt he should be, and all that had nothing to do with his lesson. And I just saw that I was just like my father. And in that moment, I just remember my father beating me. And I remember as a child just looking up at him and going, this punishment doesn't fit the crime. And it would just seem that he was hitting me. And my father used to get a 2x4, go into the garage, cut a part of the 2x4, and come back and hit me with that. And and I would hear him sawing the 2x4 and all, that whole thing. And I just remember I couldn't understand why as a child I would get beat that way. It didn't make sense to me. It never and I saw that connection in spanking Jordan. And I never ever spanked my children from that moment on. And it was no longer punishment, was no longer an option.
That's those moments of awareness that we have. We have it in relationships too. I remember being in a relationship where I had the awareness that this is many, many years ago, that I would get so upset and so triggered. Everything's about that conscious awareness and having that moment. I remember I'd get so upset, and the poor, whoever I was going out with back then, poor person, I would just talk and have to get them to feel it. And then once they finally acknowledged it the way that I felt was appropriate, it was literally like that energy, that anxiety, that upset was off of me and on them.
Yeah.
And my ex and I talked about it. It's like, holy crap. It's all about being conscious so that you don't do that. I don't want to do that. And I stopped, So, but it's the same thing. It's that awareness that you're like, oh, I'm just doing a pattern probably of, something that you saw. And then having that moment, but it's energetic too. Like if you get it, that it's energetic and kind of cleanse yourself. That's
like, where does punishment, who does punishment serve? Does it serve the person that's being punished? Or is it like not in service, but I'm going to use that word. Is it in service? It's all about me being the punisher.
The only thing that I can think of with punishment being of service is like if someone is a sociopath or psychopath and they have no way of controlling themselves, then if they're punished and they're put away, they can't hurt people. Like that's kind of
and the question about that, Brenda, is had they had parents or a situation earlier in their life that had compassion, would they have become that way? Now, in some cases, yes, there are chemical imbalances and there are things where people just are broken
Sociopath. There are
inside.
sociopaths.
Sociopath,
Yeah.
right? But in a lot of cases, they've been created by generations or links in a chain where people weren't allowed to have the awareness. Prior generations, in my experience, not a fact, just in my experience, prior generations didn't spend quite as much time having the awareness that we have in these generations of how do I feel? Where is this? What's that coming from? And we're unraveling things that were hundreds and sometimes thousands of years of bad programming that were suddenly like changing and shifting. And what if that sociopath had parents with an awareness that could have not done that? Would even they need to be punished?
Oh, I agree with that.
What is
100%.
punishment?
They're out and they're doing things like that. Yeah, totally. I mean, I looked at this so deeply because my father was a sociopath, not knowing that, and a narcissist. And I don't like labels, but I understand it in a way. And then I look back, and how I was able to find compassion for him was knowing what his childhood was like and what his relationship with his mother was. And then when I did some studying about, people, how the relationship dynamics that raise someone like that. But it's true. People aren't given, even nowadays, if you think about all the school shootings and things like that, these kids, even if they came from, some of them seem like they've come from parents that were doing the best they could. But, I don't know if it's a combination of society, combination of parents that are doing the best they can, but don't have the tools, like there's so many different things with mental illness. But I do agree that if during those first few years, they get the love that they need so they don't have that attachment disorder, that it would be a different society. And if people could talk about it without there being shame and really get help.
There's this other piece that I've seen in the men's work that I've done, and I've been in men's circles for over 20 years, and it's changed my life a million times. But the greatest thing is, for me, I've seen that many of the men that I come in contact with don't have any understanding about how to process the emotions they're feeling, how to understand the emotions they're feeling. And so they feel them and they get afraid and they feel bad. We shouldn't be feeling this. I shouldn't have this reaction. And they shove it down, and then it festers, and then it comes out in the wrong place, and they beat a woman.
Yeah.
And so one of the things
or drink,
that I
or
think
do
has been
like,
right, whatever it is.
Strategy,
I mean, there's a saying in the men's circle that there's about 1 million ways men ask for help, and that's probably one of them. Whether it's drinking, whether it's abuse, whether it's driving quickly.
Not to feel like sad,
right?
And
so they've created this like short circuit inside themselves because you're not allowed to feel, you're not allowed to express that. If you felt that, you would scare people. They would never stop feeling that pain. And so through this work that I've done, the self work that I've done, I love the feeling. If I feel angry, I want to feel it. I want to fully feel it and embrace it. And usually anger is covering up the sadness. It's covering up the fear. It's covering up the shame. And if men can start to pull the plug on that short circuit of not being able to feel and just go, wow, I'm mad. This is what mad feels like.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
What do I want to do with that mad? Let it go. All of a sudden, it's gone. And you look at the school shootings or your situation with your father, or Jamie, the situation with your uncle, or any of the experiences that we've all had or participated in. If we could get underneath that emotional loop, whatever the emotion is, and feel it, we could transform it into anything we choose, which didn't happen in prior generations. That kind of awareness for many, many generations never existed in my experience.
It still doesn't happen in many communities,
Yeah.
I feel almost like I'm in a bubble here in California. I feel I'm lucky.
We are
very, very lucky here. Jamie, why don't you take us out? Let us know what are your thoughts here. We got a few more minutes. The whole punishing thing, the whole idea of punishing.
We didn't. I never spanked William. We talked to him. Whenever something would come up, we had an instance when he was in a Waldorf school, and he threw a ball and hit a girl in the face, and he didn't want to apologize. And we talked to him about it. I think when he gets older, he's going to say, "Why didn't you guys just beat my ass and get it over with and stop talking me to death?" But it's fascinating because I know when he's pissed off at me. He articulates it. He articulates his boundaries. For me, and it took a long time for me to based on, what's gone on, to not cross his boundaries, and a lot of discussion with Suze about honoring his boundaries, and, when he's going through something. So it's been a very interesting, when you've had your boundaries so violated. I'll be 60 this summer. And, it's just taken years. And the thing of it is, this is for me. I don't know about y'all. You might be levitating. I'm not.
Certainly not levitating.
I was always looking for that thing where it would be like, whoa, and the God beams come out of the sky and the angels come down and everything is great from here on out. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I was looking for that, and it's like I realize we're in the process of life. It's like I say all the time, life is in process, and that's what's always going on for me. And it's a constant learning. It's a constant learning with myself. I think I'm quicker and I'm better at it today to witness when I'm in shame or when I'm in guilt, when I'm punishing myself, or when I'm forgiving myself for judging myself or someone else. As it's a process. I'm grateful that I'm aware of it. The difference between 1993 when my father passed and 2012 when my 53-year-old brother passed of cancer, my ability to grieve, I didn't know how to grieve in 1993. I had no idea. From 1993 to 2012, I had gotten I'd actually been sober for 2 years when my dad died, but I still wasn't real connected. By the time my brother died in 2012, I'd been sober for a number of years. I'd gotten to Agape. I'd done a lot of classes there. I'd been through USM. When my brother died, I knew how to grieve. So you get the information when you get the information. You learn the lessons when you learn the lessons. And we're all on this journey. And it's a journey. Stop and smell the flowers along the way. It's like Walter Hagen used to say, don't hurry, never worry, stop and smell the roses along the way. And it's like, that's, I slowly but surely I'm getting there, and the lessons, like the onion, keep unfolding.
I love it. Thank
Beautiful.
you guys for hanging out. I'd love to do this again. If you guys
Thank
are open,
you.
I'll send it.
Absolutely.
Always open for you, Martine. Whatever I can do for you.
What a great conversation. Thank you guys. I want to honor that I said we do it for an hour, and I'm going to let you guys go, and I'm just going to go ahead and close it up here.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you. Fantastic to meet you, Jamie and Brenda.
Yes,
Fantastic to meet you both.
Brenda, thank you, Martine. I love you. Love your family.
You too, brother. Yeah.
We
got to get you next time. We'll have you sing. How's that, Jamie?
That would be great.
Oh, yes, I want to be there.
That'll be a treat.
Peace and
Take
blessings.
care. See you guys.
Thank you.
Hey guys, thanks for hanging out. Martine Lopez with the Curiosity Theory. Just a really, just a beautiful class. I'm so blessed that I feel so blessed that I have so many wonderful friends that talk about such cool things. Jamie and Dylan and Brenda. And I just want to encourage you to take time in your conversations and, change the conversation from, COVID and all the stuff that we're afraid of and all the stuff that we deal with on a day-to-day basis, and take a moment to do self-forgiveness. Like Jamie said, look at forgiving yourself for the judgments that you make. Remember what Dylan said about boundaries and how he looks at boundaries. And I want to point out something that's really powerful that I've noticed in all three of these people. Dylan had said something, and what I did is I kind of went back and I made a suggestion, how about if we look at it this way? And there was no ego, there was nothing. It was just like, that's great, and just took that and went with that. That's a quality that not a lot of people have. When we're looking at having a better life, when we're looking at forgiveness and all the different things, the qualities that we want are emulated from the people that we look at and that we follow and that we can learn from. we all have powers. We all have strengths that we can learn from ourselves. We have things that we can learn from, and we have things that we can teach. But be open to other people and the other things that other people teach. God bless you. We'll be back tomorrow night. We're going to be talking about, I think we're talking about fitness. So tomorrow night, I'll post it in a few minutes. And thank you for hanging out with me, everybody. Take care.